Good morning and welcome to another edition of the CannaList Conversation. I am your host, Patrick Doherty, and today we have with us Yael Harrosh, who is the Global Chief Legal and Operations Officer at IMC. Yael, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Patrick, nice to meet you. Thanks for
Likewise.
having me.
So my understanding is that your position, you recently moved into this position. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I've been working at IMC for the past 3.5 years. I started as general counsel. At the beginning, we were an Israel-based company that had aspiration to be global and to be one of the best. So we started this journey back in 2018 with a few very capable people on the team. Yes, from then to now, we listed in NASDAQ, we listed in Canadian Stock Exchange, we had some few M&As in Canada and in Israel and in Germany, and today we're operating in all the 3 big markets, legal markets in the world, which is basically Europe, Israel, and Canada. And along the way, I did a lot of, let's call it business and operational function in the organization. And recently I got the acknowledgement, which I of course appreciate, and thanks to the organization and IMC that acknowledged that, and also received the title of Chief Officer, Operation Officer. So I'm very grateful for that as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the cannabis environment in Israel?
So yeah, I think I can discuss about Israel and the entire sector, and I want to do that from the inclusion point of view, because I think that that's the point of our discussion. So Israel is one of, as I'm sure you're aware, is one of the pioneers in this field. So back in 2010, the industry started. We had 7 LPs in Israel. IMC was one of them, who grew for about 5,000 patients. It was mainly dominated by men, as it was all over the world, also in Canada and the US. There is a research from that shows that out of the 45 first LPs in Canada, all of them were men, all the founders. So in Israel, it was basically the same, but the industry started, as I said, in around 2010 with companies like Tikkun Olam and IMC and others. And it's grew rapidly throughout the years. Today, we can see that the climate changed a bit. In Israel, I don't have the specific data about how many businesses are owned by women, but we do see, and we'll discuss that in a second, why the hurdles and access to finance and all of that. But we do see a lot more female in executive positions. Even in IMC, if I'm talking about IMC, so IMC has 38% of women women versus men. But if we're talking about our headquarters here in Israel, we have even more men than males. Yeah,
females than
of course, very encouraging. And also in leading position and in executive position, which is, for me, what is more important. This is how you set, the records, and this is how you create progress. But the situation is in Canada and in the US that we're talking about less than 14% of female in executive position in Canada. In the US, if I remember the research that I just read, it was around 25 to 30. So we're talking about still low numbers. And if we're talking about the cannabis industry versus other industries, so we see even lower numbers, which is of course interesting to discuss. But I think the situation in Israel is a bit better than other places, but of course there are still places for improvement always.
And just from a historical perspective, Israel has been focused primarily on the medicinal side. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is there adult use or recreational use at this point, if not, is it something that is being worked on?
for the moment, no recreational use, only medical use. There was a bill, and the government discussed that, I think, in the past since 2019. There is a huge hype around this and discussion. As you probably know, the government was not very stable in the last few years in Israel. Few elections, 4 or 5 rounds of elections. So this wasn't the primary focus of the government, but it is something that is constantly being discussed, and hopefully we'll see it, if not in 2022, then 2023. It's coming. I don't know when, but it's coming.
We're saying that about just about everywhere now.
Yeah.
It's coming. Just wait. Be patient.
Wishful thinking,
Yeah. So you mentioned Israel, North America, and Europe. I'm assuming that when you say Europe, you're primarily looking at Germany initially?
Right.
Okay. And you're looking at Germany from the medicinal side, because they just recently announced that they're going to do adult use, enact adult use. But your current interest is medicinal, right?
Yeah, so in Germany, we're operating since 2018 through a company called Agipharm. And yes, we are always operating according to law, and as of today, and since 2018, it's only a medical market. We're all waiting for it to change, to create some more business opportunities, and we are getting ourselves prepared for that in Israel and in Europe as well. But as of now, only medical.
And so you mentioned the statistics around the lack of representation of women in the workforce, in leadership positions, and then also on board positions, right? So in governance. And this is something that, while the numbers may be slightly worse in cannabis, we see this generally across, most companies where there's just not the representation. What do you think why is IMC pursuing diversity to this level, and why is this so important?
So, like every company, I think everything starts with the head, with the CEO and the founder. So in IMC, Owen Schuster is a big believer in inclusion and diversity. It's something that it's not for optics. It's like he truly believes in that. He liked the different voices around him, whether it's women or, other, diversity groups that can suggest a different view on things. And besides that, even though it is important to him, and this is something that we are referring to him, we are basically taking people by merit. We don't there isn't any boys clubs in IMC. Even though in Israel there are a lot of friends from the army and all of that, which is kind of a different boys clubs in Israel. Someone you serve with, someone that was in the army with you, but that's not the case in IMC. And you see that with my position, with the fact that in our headquarters we have 51%, if I'm not mistaken, of female in executive roles. We also nominated now a new CEO for the Israeli operation. So in IMC, I believe everything starts with the founder and the CEO, Owen Schuster. Besides that, we have 2 out of 5 board members that are female, Haleli and Vivian Berkovici, which I think is very important. But I think what is even more important, and if we're talking about inclusion, we have to talk about equal pay and equal opportunities. Then in our compensation committee, 2 out of the 3, and also the chair is a woman. And that's the way to set equal pay. That's the way to set equal opportunities. So we're big believers. We always have room to improve, and we're working on it. But it's definitely, I'm very proud to work at IMC, and I think it's a very good place for women to get their career forward.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen in like if we look at California, which is probably one of the earlier markets, there's definitely a bro culture, and even when you go to events today, those bros are there, and that culture exists. And despite all that, when we look at studies, companies that are led by women perform better. And why do you think that is?
So I think it's mainly because, as I said, different voice, because, women bring something else to the table. It's not necessarily different skills, but a bit more of emotional intelligence, which I do think that women excels more. Also, we're less driven by ego and the need to, to prove something. We have a better way to solve problems and make decisions. I'm always, I'm always laughing that, women representation in operational function is kind of low. In Israel and wide world, it's a known fact. And I'm always looking at a mom, trying to set up a vacation, or I don't know, even a date night with her husband, and then see some operational, everything is break down to the fine details of who is taking care of food, who is taking care of babysitting, like when the kids are going to nap, like micromanaging to the last detail. So I do think that, as I said, women bring a different view. And when you're looking at executive and when you're looking at boardrooms, this different view and angles about decision making is something that is very important. And yes, a lot of, as you said, a lot of studies showing that when women get fair representation, even if it's equal or close to equal, then you see the results of the company and they are much better.
And you've done well. So what challenges have you faced being a woman in this position?
No one hands out anything. You need to claim, you need to ask for, you need to have the, I wouldn't call it balls, but you need to, you need to have the courage to ask for a position next to the table. Sheryl Sandberg said it well. She wrote a book about it, Lean In. But it's very true. No one will give you a raise just like that, even if you deserve it. No one will tell you, okay, yeah, you can come to this meeting. You need to ask. And, I have a professional, I have an athletic background, I will call it. And I think it helped me a lot with, taking those chances and saying, what the heck, what will happen? Maybe someone will tell me no. Okay, that's the worst that can happen. But the benefit that I can gain once you get your foot into the door, once you get into the meetings, when you get into the board rooms, you're in there, and no one will take you out. So you need to basically have the courage to step in, to ask for whatever you feel you deserve, to take a lot upon yourself. In IMC, we grew very fast, very quickly. And there was a lot of, void in position that, I started as general counsel and the company grew and we needed some operational function and we needed IR function and marketing and a lot of things. And of course, we brought people to do most of those things. But in the interim period, I took a lot upon myself. I said, I will do it. I will take it. And I think that helps me to get to where I am. But it's not an easy ride. Even, I give a lot of compliments to IMC. There's still a ceiling for women, and there's still something that we always need to push forward. We need to ask for. But I'm using this platform to tell every woman, every young woman that, want to push forward her career, just to ask for what would you deserve. No one will say no, and that's the worst thing that can happen.
And why is cannabis a good industry to pursue these equality measures?
I don't know. Cannabis industry is is the best in general. There are so many opportunities and growing so rapidly. So I think, I think that for women specifically, this industry is even harder. So it's not the best. I think the main reason for that is access to capital, and we're always discussing that cannabis industry is traditionally was an industry where the traditional banks were not part of it, so you needed to bring capital from home and cash, and women historically have less access to capital, capital and also to, investor relations and network. So I think that was part of the reason that we didn't see a lot of female establishing cannabis companies. But if we're talking about, executive position and all of that, so I think that one of the reasons that women are very good at this specific industry is that you always need to think quickly on your feet. Everything changes so fast. We see that the regulation changes all the time. Every year you get another company that changes, another country that changes the regulation. Yes, recreational, no recreational, and other opportunities. Germany opened the gates, the legalization in the US. So we see all of those changes, and you always need to think on your feet. And I think that's something that women excel. So.
And having been fortunate to achieve these positions, how do you mentor the next generation?
So I'm strong believer in mentor by by self mentoring and showing a good example for the next generation by being in those positions. But other than that, first of all, I'm in a group called Women Can, which is an Israeli group designated for the cannabis industry. And in this group, there are young but also senior women in senior positions that we're talking about the challenges and the opportunities and job opportunities and how we can improve the industry. This is one. But for young women, it is very important for me to show them that, again, that they are worthy, that they're capable, to talk about, the fallbacks. I'm always getting the answer, okay, but no one invited me. Okay, so no one invited you, but ask to participate. Again, what the worst that will happen? They will say no. I see that, when women apply, and again, it's, we're talking in general, and but when women apply for jobs and you have the requirement, usually if a woman will see a job opportunity, if she is not 100% or 90% fit for all the requirements, she will not apply. Men usually, if they're over 50% of the requirement, they will apply anyway. What the heck? What can happen? So I think this mentality of trying to dare more and trying to ask for more and what we deserve is something that I'm trying to pass forward.
And as you enter new markets, for example, like Germany, I'm assuming they're male dominated when you're entering these markets.
Yes, that's correct.
And then how do they respond to you, and how do they respond to these initiatives? Are they supportive? Are they opposed? How do these new markets look at diversity and inclusion?
I think in general, it's a personal thing, even though, we're talking about a very big topic and very important topic. In the end, you have this personal connection, and I'm always trying to get a common ground. I have like a rule that to try to find a common ground in the 3 minutes of the first 3 minutes of the conversation, and then the rest is much easier. Usually it's around sports. It helps. Sports and weather. That's the icebreaker. But I found it, and I'm also, one of the challenges is also that I'm young, so we can't ignore that. So to try and manage or to work with people that are senior in age, and also, yes, males, it is, I wouldn't call it difficult. I find it challenging. I like working with men. I like working with women. I think that, again, you need to find, but in the end, it's, it's personal connections, and I need to find a common ground, and I always do. So, and again, sports, always something good to start with. And I don't see any problems with that, not in Germany, not in Canada, not in Israel. Everyone are very supportive.
Yeah, I know that when we're in meetings when we're working with folks in California, that there's always a component of the meeting that's devoted to DEI, right? Diversity, equality, inclusion. Are we starting to see that in other territories and other regions? This focus?
What about the discussion about this
Well, actually,
topic?
it's mandated that as part of these, planning sessions, that there is a discussion around DEI, that this idea of diversity, equality and inclusion. So every meeting will have some portion allocated to how are we addressing DEI. And I don't believe that I see this outside of California. I see this primarily just in California right now.
So I think it's a trend that not a trend, it's an important trend, but a trend that we see all around the world about social accountability and diversity accountability. So this topic is being discussed. It's even discussed in our boardrooms. As I told you, compensation committee, which again, it's important for many aspects. Compensation is not just the salary, but also human resource in the company, and how we achieve the right diversity in the company. So it's being discussed. We don't have the policy in place yet. Okay, this is something that we're still working on. It is being referred to a bit in our code of ethics. But I think today we're starting to see some laws around it. You see the law in New York now about the need to publish a range of salaries when you're offering a job. So we do see a change all around the world about this, but the change happens slowly. But us as IMC, this is something that we're discussing and we're trying to implement into our daily business.
And in Israel, are there social equity programs for folks that are looking to enter the market that, aren't the traditional LPs with lots of money? So how do you support entrance into the market for diversity reasons?
So unfortunately, I'm not familiar with any programs, any specific programs. I think there are a few from the government, but they're not diversity focused. Okay. I know there are a few females that establish cannabis, but again, they came back from a background with money, families with money, they have their own capital. The situation in Israel is better than the US in the way that banks and the traditional banking community supports cannabis, because it's not federally legal like the US, even though we see changes also in the US in this aspect. So it is a bit easier to get access to capital, but we still see that as a hurdle for women to get into this space.
And while it's tremendously important to pursue these initiatives within your organization, what about the ecosystem? Like, do you look at vendors, and do you have any sort of programs with your vendors where, a woman-owned business or a local-owned business or something like that will get some sort of points towards procurement and things like that?
So I'll start with my own legal department. So we're three, and we're all three women. Not necessarily because I wanted to, even though I do support that, but again, I find specifically in the interviews that I did that the women were more capable. So it is by merit, and it's important to say, because sometimes you think, okay, so women are getting the position because the company needs to show the optics or something like that. So no, it's merit, and they are, again, worthy and capable. Regarding vendors and all of that, again, this is something that we're working on. We don't have any policy in place yet. As I said, IMC is a company that started this global journey in 2018, and we grew up very, very fast. And now we're starting to building all the programs and everything that is not mandate that we needed to do when we're listed on NASDAQ. But again, this is something that, and I'm glad that you raised that, because this is something that we're also discussing internally. And once this is, something that is being discussed, it's just a matter of time or a few months or, in the next year that we'll have all those programs in place.
And so for you, what are the biggest challenges that you're facing for the rest of 2022?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just sum that up. That's easy, right?
First of all, my pregnancy.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's a personal challenge.
How far along?
32 weeks and 4 days, but who's counting, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
exciting. Is this your first?
First, and
Congratulations.
a baby girl. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much. Talking about inclusion.
Right.
So,
Of course you had to have a girl, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you had to be a basketball player. So,
Okay.
So, 2022, the challenges are basically integration and operational ones. As I said, we in 2020, we bought 2 companies in Canada, Tricom and NYM, and in 2021, we bought 5 pharmacies and retails in Israel. So again, a lot of acquisitions, short period of time. This is the time to do the integration, optimization of processes, and to set some policies. Some of them we discuss and some others in place. We're around 400 employees all over the world. And we need to see how we take this, global IMC and optimizing our processes and integration.
And the changing legislation and the jurisdictions, I'm guessing that means new challenges almost every day.
Right. That's the great part of this industry. I love it. I'm always saying that, when I'm interviewing people to IMC, I'm always saying this is not for someone with a weak heart. You get challenges every day, the legislation and everything regarding governance and legislation is super hard. It's an obstacle. We see that, we face that every day, also from an operational perspective, but from a legal perspective. I'm lucky to handle those two functions. So there's a lot of challenges every day, but for me, it's part of the fun. I don't like things that are easy. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, operating in multiple jurisdictions, that'll keep you busy, right? Because everyone's got their own set of laws and regulations that you need to comply with.
Yeah, but we have very good people in every jurisdiction. It's not just me. It's a teamwork, team efforts. We have very, very good people in Canada, also in Germany, in Israel, of course. So, I'm the global and overseeing everything, but on the day-to-day, they're doing the hard work and they're doing it excellent. So,
and
I'm relaxed.
The opportunities, are you looking at Europe as the big market? Are you, is North America established? Where are the opportunities going forward for you guys?
So I think in Israel, first of all, there's still work to do. And hopefully if we'll get legalization, then there will be some big opportunities.
So adult use, right?
Sorry?
Adult use, you mean?
Adult use, yeah. Okay. Even though it's a limited market, but there are some opportunities in Israel that we still are waiting, and also export from Israel, which also creates a lot of opportunities for us. But yeah, Europe is our main goal. We're working extensively in Canada, but the opportunities, if I'm looking at the opportunities, it's mainly in Europe. Europe is, when you're talking about the big Europe, it's mainly Germany today. So there are so many countries that can, go along with the ride and enjoy this great industry. And hopefully in the next few years, we'll see country by country approving at least medical cannabis use.
Yeah, our belief is, Germany will become the template for Europe, and that once Germany, it has medicinal and then recognizes adult use, other countries will then quickly follow, and they'll use the German model and the German regulations to, like if it works in Germany, it works everywhere else. So, we think that, once Germany becomes an established recreational market, then we'll start to see the dominoes fall in Europe as well.
Yeah, you see that also in the medical, not non-cannabis, but in the pharmaceutical industry, where Germany and the bee farm is kind of the gold standard for a lot of the other EU and European countries.
And are you guys doing CBD products as well?
No, in Israel, CBD is out of the law at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or is that being challenged, or is that just you're
Yes.
focused on cannabis right now?
Yes, it's being challenged, and I'm actually, my personal view is that CBD will be taken out of the of will be lawful. Even
Reclassified or something, yeah.
yeah, even before the adult use. So I'm thinking this is something very near future that will happen.
And do you have banking in Israel for cannabis companies, or what is the status of that? Because it's not.
Banking, sorry.
Well, like in the US, they're very focused on passing the Banking Act because the banks are federal, so therefore the local state-run businesses can't have bank accounts that end up being a cash operation, which obviously is fraught with problems. Is that similar in Israel?
No, in Israel, the banks, are I think in the last few years, 3 to 4 years, are integral part of this industry.
Okay.
They're helping with funding, no problem to establish bank accounts. They're participating in investment rounds. So yeah, it's a different economy than the US.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the challenge of being the international player is, that you're dealing with all types of different rules and regulations based on, wherever you're doing business.
Yeah, it's very challenging. I can tell you that even the fact that we're dual listing both in Canada and in the NASDAQ capital markets. So, there are some challenges that we need to face, but again, this is part of it, part of the journey.
Well, yeah, we very much appreciate your time today, and we very much wish you the best in your new adventures this year. Sounds like you got a lot on your plate and some new stuff coming along. So congratulations, and we hope to speak with you again.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
Bye.